During the Great Depression, American families had a secret growing in their backyards: 25 incredible vegetables that people today have completely forgotten. These tough plants helped entire families survive the hardest times in modern American history. Let's discover these forgotten vegetables that our grandparents relied on. Rutabagas. Back in the 1930s, times were tough, but smart families had a secret growing in their gardens. People called it the poor man's potato, yet this vegetable was actually worth its weight in gold. Unlike regular potatoes, rutabagas packed more vitamin C than oranges, making them a real lifesaver when fresh fruit was hard to come by. What made them even more valuable was their amazing storage life. These hardy vegetables stayed fresh for months in a simple root cellar, and the best part was that rutabagas didn't care about poor soil. When other vegetables would barely grow, rutabagas thrived, producing bumper crops even in the worst conditions. Families could plant them in late summer and harvest enough to last through the entire winter. Dandelion. Cultivated wild green, while most people today think of dandelions as lawn weeds. Depression-era gardeners knew better. They cultivated special varieties of dandelions that produced leaves twice the size of their wild cousins. These weren't the bitter lawn invaders. We know today these were carefully selected plants that provided food from spring until winter. Every single part of the dandelion could be used. The young leaves made fresh salads in early spring before other greens were ready. The older leaves could be cooked like spinach. The flowers could be made into wine or fritters, and the roots could be roasted and ground as a coffee substitute. What made dandelions especially valuable was their appearance in early spring, often providing the first fresh greens after winter when families desperately needed vitamins. Depression-era gardeners would mark their cultivated dandelion patches with sticks distinguishing them from wild plants. The deep-growing taproots meant these plants survived drought and poor soil, providing reliable food when other plants failed. Jerusalem artichokes. Pure genius in its own right, Jerusalem artichokes were here long before the Depression, taught to European settlers by Native Americans who had grown them for centuries. Unlike other vegetables that required replanting each year, these were perennial. Once planted, they returned on their own year after year. With a natural sweetness thanks to inulin, they were a treat when other foods were scarce. What made them truly special was that you could harvest them throughout winter, even in frozen ground, by simply digging up what you needed and leaving the rest for later. Moreover, if you worried about having enough for the next year, these plants would spread on their own, creating a reliable food supply that grew larger every season. Mangel whorls. The magnificent mangel whorls, the giant that fed America, might sound strange today. A beet-like vegetable that grew as big as a bowling ball. These giants could reach impressive sizes, and during the Depression were worth their weight in gold. Although most people today have never heard of them, mangel whorls served double duty. Families cooked them like regular beets to bring out their natural sweetness and also used them to feed their livestock through winter. Their massive roots could be stored for months in a simple root cellar, providing food security when needed most, and their high sugar content made them surprisingly tasty when baked like a potato or added to soups. Winter radishes. While the small red radishes we know today might look cute in our salads, Depression-era families grew something much more impressive: winter radishes. These weren't your ordinary radishes. They grew as big as turnips and packed much more food value. Families would plant them in late summer, and by fall, they had massive roots that could feed a family for days. Every part of these giants was used. The roots were sliced for meals or shredded for storage, while the greens were cooked like spinach, providing vital nutrients when fresh vegetables were scarce. Additionally, winter radishes naturally kept pests away from other crops, as gardeners planted them around their vegetables to form a natural barrier that protected the entire garden. Best of all, these hardy vegetables could be stored through winter in a simple root cellar, staying crisp and fresh for months. When money was tight, having vegetables that both protected the garden and fed the family was worth its weight in gold. Hamburg-rooted parsley. In tough times, families needed plants that could do more than one job, and Hamburg-rooted parsley was exactly that. Unlike the parsley we know today, which only offers leaves, this forgotten variety developed large, sturdy roots underground that resembled parsnips. These roots weren't just for show. They stored perfectly through winter in simple root cellars, providing food when fresh vegetables were scarce above ground. The leaves retained the familiar parsley flavor, packed with more vitamin C than oranges, and they added fresh flavor to meals all year round. Families would harvest the leaves throughout summer, using them fresh or drying them for winter use. Then in the fall, they dug up the thick white roots and stored them alongside other root vegetables. With a rich, earthy flavor that added depth to soups and stews, Hamburg-rooted parsley proved its worth as smart gardeners planted several rows, harvesting roots from some plants while letting others continue producing leaves. Parsnips. After the first frost hit the garden, something magical happened to parsnips. They transformed from ordinary root vegetables into nature's candy. Unlike most vegetables that suffered in cold weather, parsnips actually got better, converting their starches into natural sugars that made them surprisingly sweet during the Depression. This transformation made them incredibly valuable, especially when sugar was too expensive for many families. A single row of parsnips could provide both food and sweetness all winter long, and they were packed with calories far exceeding those in carrots or potatoes, perfect for hardworking families in need of energy-rich food. Gardeners discovered they could leave parsnips in the ground through winter, using the earth as a natural storage cellar. Whenever food was needed, a few roots were dug up. Even if the ground was frozen, those left behind would stay fresh until spring, providing a reliable supply when other vegetables had long disappeared. Some families even marked their parsnip rows with tall stakes so they could be found under the snow. Salsify. While mangel whorls were the giants of the garden, another root vegetable brought something completely different to the table, a taste that reminded people of better times. Salsify, known as the oyster plant, had a unique flavor reminiscent of fresh oysters, bringing a touch of luxury to even the humblest dinner table. During the Depression, salsify became a family favorite because it was like having a root cellar right in your garden. You could leave it in the ground all winter and dig it up whenever you needed food. If you weren't ready to harvest, it would wait patiently underground, staying fresh for months. Clever gardeners discovered that salsify was like getting two vegetables in one, as both its roots and greens were edible, making every plant twice as valuable. Collard greens. When vegetables that wouldn't quit were needed, collard greens rose to the occasion. These remarkable greens had an extraordinary ability to keep growing even when other garden vegetables gave up during oppressive summer heat waves that wilted lettuce and spinach. Collards stood tall and strong with thick leaves that continued to provide fresh food for the table. When winter frost killed off most other greens, collards only grew sweeter, often surviving temperatures as low as 10 degrees. This resilience meant that families could harvest fresh vegetables nearly year-round from the same plants. Gardeners would begin by picking the lower leaves in early summer, allowing the plants to continuously produce new leaves from the top like a never-ending food factory. When excess leaves accumulated, preservation was simple. They could be canned, dried, or salted down in barrels, ensuring a crucial source of vitamins during the lean winter months. Moreover, collards packed more nutrition than almost any other green vegetable, supplying calcium for strong bones and enough vitamin C to keep families healthy during difficult times. Winter cabbage. In the final act of resourcefulness, one variety of cabbage stood head and shoulders above the rest: the Danish ballhead. This wasn't ordinary cabbage. It was specially bred for long-term storage and became a lifesaver for families struggling through winter. Its incredibly dense head was packed so tight that a single cabbage felt as heavy as a bowling ball, a density that allowed it to stay fresh for an astounding 6 to 8 months in a root cellar without any special treatment. Even when frost hit the garden, these tough plants stood their ground, growing sweeter as temperatures dropped. Families discovered that they could harvest heads right up until the ground froze solid, and the cabbage's high vitamin C content meant that just one serving provided as much nutrition as a glass of orange juice. A crucial benefit during winter months when fresh vegetables were scarce. Fresh fruit wasn't available, smart gardeners would plant their winter cabbage. In midsummer, timing it so the heads would mature just as the cold weather arrived, they knew that a good crop of Danish ballhead meant their families would have fresh vegetables long after the garden was buried in snow. Swiss chard. While collards reigned in winter, Swiss chard was the cut-and-come-again champion of the growing season. Families discovered that Swiss chard had an almost magical ability. The more you harvested it, the more it grew. This unique trait meant that just a few plants could feed a family for months, unlike regular greens that required frequent replanting. Swiss chard would continually produce from the same stalks throughout the season. Its large, crinkled leaves could be harvested young and tender for fresh eating or left to mature for cooking, even in the hottest part of summer when lettuce would bolt and turn bitter. Swiss chard remained sweet and productive, and its high vitamin content, especially vitamins A and C, was a vital nutritional boost during the Depression. Families planted it near the kitchen door for easy access, picking a few leaves daily for months on end, ensuring a steady supply of fresh greens from late spring until the hard frosts of fall. Navy beans. While most vegetables provided vitamins and minerals, Depression-era families needed something that could replace expensive meat. and that's where navy beans became worth their weight in gold. These small white beans were protein powerhouses, providing nearly as much protein as a serving of meat at a fraction of the cost. But their value went far beyond just nutrition. Navy beans had a remarkable ability to dry, right on the vine, making them practically foolproof. To store, families would plant them in spring, tend them through summer, and by fall they'd have beans that could last for years, without any special storage equipment needed during the growing season. These beans did something extraordinary. They actually improved the soil. They grew in by fixing nitrogen from the air. This meant that not only did they feed families today, but they made the garden more productive for next year's crops. Depression-era gardeners would often plant navy beans alongside their corn, letting the beans climb the corn stalks while enriching the soil for both plants. A single row of navy beans could produce enough dried beans to provide protein for a family. All winter long, people would store them in simple glass jars or cloth sacks, knowing they had a reliable source of protein ready whenever they needed it. Turnips. During the Depression, time was as precious as money, and turnips proved their worth in just 6 weeks, faster than almost any other vegetable. Families could go from planting seeds to harvesting full-grown turnips quickly, ensuring that even if other crops failed, there was still time to plant turnips for winter food. But speed wasn't their only strength. These hardy vegetables defied drought, growing strong even when rain was scarce and other plants withered. Families learned to maximize every turnip plant. The roots could be eaten fresh, mashed like potatoes, or stored in root cellars for months, while the greens served as a nutritious meal on their own, ideal for cooking or adding to soups. Some families planted turnips several times during the growing season, some for immediate eating, others for storage, and still more to provide a constant supply of fresh greens long after the summer garden was done. Field corn. When people think of corn today, they picture sweet corn eaten fresh off the cob. But during the Depression, families relied on something far more valuable: field corn. This wasn't the sweet corn we know today. It was a hearty, high-calorie crop that could feed a family for months. Field corn had an incredible advantage over other vegetables because it served multiple purposes. Families would let it mature fully on the stalk until the kernels were hard and dry. Once harvested, these dried kernels could be ground into cornmeal, providing the foundation for countless meals from cornbread and porridge to corn cakes and mush. A single acre of field corn could produce enough cornmeal to feed a family for an entire year. The dried corn stored perfectly in a simple barn or shed, requiring no special equipment or preparation during the hardest times of the Depression. This cornmeal became the backbone of family nutrition, providing essential calories when other foods were scarce. Ground cherries. Nature's candy wrapped in paper, while most garden vegetables were purely practical. Ground cherries brought something special to Depression era. Gardens a touch of sweetness wrapped in nature's own paper packaging. These unusual fruits related to tomatoes grew inside papery husks that looked like tiny Chinese lanterns. The husks served as perfect natural wrappers, protecting the sweet golden fruits inside and allowing them to store for months without any special treatment. Depression-era children would delight in finding these wrapped candies in the garden, peeling back the paper-like husks to reveal the marble-sized fruits that tasted like a mix of pineapple and vanilla. What made ground cherries especially valuable was their self-seeding nature. Once you had them in your garden, they would come back year after year on their own. Families could store ground cherries right in their husks in a cool, dry place, and they would keep fresh for months, providing rare sweet treats long after other fruits were gone. The plants produced continuously from midsummer until frost, ensuring a steady supply of these naturally wrapped treasures. Kentucky Wonderpole beans. During the Depression, garden space was precious, and Kentucky Wonderpole beans solved this problem brilliantly by growing up instead of out. These remarkable climbing beans could reach heights of 7 to 8 feet, turning a small corner of the garden into a food-producing tower. Once they started producing, these beans seemed almost magical. The more you picked, the more they grew. Families would send their children out every morning to harvest the new beans that had appeared overnight. A single pole bean plant could produce for months, providing fresh green beans for summer meals and plenty extra to dry for winter. Depression-era gardeners would set up simple poles or trellises made from whatever they had: branches, twine, or even old labs. These resourceful techniques meant that even families with tiny backyard gardens could grow enough beans to last through winter. The Kentucky Wonder variety became famous for its reliability. Even in poor soil or tough conditions, these beans would produce abundantly. Their dual-purpose nature meant families could eat them fresh during summer or let them mature into dry beans for winter protein. Storage onions. The long-lasting keeper while field corn provided the calories, storage onions brought both flavor and incredible keeping power to Depression-era pantries. These weren't the sweet onions we find in grocery stores today. These were tough, long-keeping varieties like Yellow Globe and Australian Brown that could last an amazing 8 to 10 months when properly stored. Depression-era families prized these onions not just for their flavor, but for their natural ability to fight disease and preserve other foods when stored alongside other vegetables. The natural compounds in storage onions help prevent spoilage, extending the life of an entire root cellar. These hardy onions were remarkably easy to grow, thriving in almost any soil and requiring very little care. Families would plant them in spring harvest in late summer and braid the strong tops together to hang in cool, dry places. A good crop of storage onions meant having both seasoning and vegetable throughout the winter months, adding vital nutrients and flavor to winter meals. Field peas. The tough southern survivor in the unrelenting heat and drought of the Depression years, field peas proved themselves as true survivors of the South. These hardy legumes thrived when other plants withered their deep roots, reaching down to find moisture even in the driest soil. Like nature's own drought insurance, field peas would keep producing food even when rain was scarce. Families valued them for their incredible versatility. Young pods could be eaten fresh, like snap beans. Tender peas could be shelled for immediate use, or the peas could be left to dry right on the vine for winter storage. But field peas did more than just feed families. They actually improved the soil. They grew in enriching it with nitrogen that would help next year's crops grow better. This dual-purpose role made them invaluable in Depression-era gardens, where every plant needed to earn its keep, and their high protein content meant they could serve as a meat substitute, helping families stay healthy even when they couldn't afford other protein sources. Skirret. The sweet root time forgot while modern gardens focus on carrots for sweetness. Depression-era families knew about a far more remarkable root vegetable, skirret. This forgotten treasure produced clusters of white roots that tasted sweeter than carrots and packed more natural sugar than almost any other root vegetable. What made skirret truly valuable was its perennial nature. Once planted, it would come back year after year, producing more roots with each passing season. During the Depression, when sugar was often too expensive for many families to buy, skirret provided a natural sweetness that made plain meals more enjoyable. The plants were incredibly hardy, laughing at winter's worst weather while storing their sweet roots safely underground. Families could harvest these roots all winter long, simply digging what they needed and leaving the rest in the ground. Nature's own root cellar, each plant would grow bigger and produce more roots every year, creating an expanding source of food that required almost no work to maintain. Good King Henry. The king of spring greens when most garden vegetables were still months away from producing, Good King Henry earned its royal name by providing some of the first fresh food of spring. This remarkable perennial green was like having multiple vegetables in one plant. As soon as the snow melted, tender shoots would emerge that could be harvested and cooked like asparagus. As the plant grew taller, its arrow-shaped leaves provided fresh greens that could be eaten raw or cooked like spinach. The plant's self-seeding nature meant it spread itself naturally, creating new plants without any effort from the gardener. Depression-era families valued Good King Henry because it was among the first fresh vegetables available, after winter appearing weeks before other garden plants were ready to harvest. Once established, these plants would return year after year, growing stronger and producing more food. Each season, they required almost no care, thriving in spots where other vegetables wouldn't grow. American ground nut. The native superfood long before the Depression. Native Americans knew about a remarkable vine that produced food-packed tubers. The American groundnut, this native plant had an extraordinary secret. Its underground tubers contained 3 times the protein of potatoes, making it one of the most nutritious root crops ever grown in American gardens during the Depression. This high protein content made ground nuts incredibly valuable. As a meat substitute, the vines would climb up corn stalks or garden fences, producing clusters of marbleized tubers that could be harvested without killing the plant. These tubers could stay fresh right in the ground through winter, creating a natural storage system that required no special preparation. Each plant would spread underground, creating new tubers that could be harvested year after year. Depression-era families discovered what Native Americans had known for centuries, that a patch of ground nuts provided reliable high-protein food with almost no effort. The plants were virtually indestructible, surviving drought, poor soil, and harsh winters while continuing to produce their nutritious tubers. Runner beans. Beauty meets bounty during the Depression. Every plant in the garden needed to earn its keep, and runner beans went above and beyond this call of duty. These remarkable climbing beans served triple duty in the garden, providing fresh snap beans and summer dry beans for winter and stunning flowers that brought beauty to even the hardest times. Unlike regular pole beans, runner beans produced beautiful red-white or bicolored blossoms that attracted pollinators to the entire garden. The plants showed incredible resilience to heat, continuing to flourish and produce beans even when summer temperatures soared. Depression-era families would plant these beans along fences or trellises where they would climb 10 feet or higher, creating edible privacy screens that produced food from ground to sky. The beans could be picked young and tender for fresh eating or left to mature into large, meaty dried beans that provided protein-rich meals throughout winter. A single planting would produce continually for months, with yields so high that many families could trade their excess beans for other necessities. Carden, the forgotten winter delicacy. Just when the garden seemed most bare, carden, also known as carden, provided an unexpected winter treat. These remarkable plants, close cousins to the artichoke, brought something special to Depression era. Gardens fresh vegetables in the middle of winter looking like giant silvery celery. Carden were prized for their unique ability to produce edible stalks even in cold weather. Unlike most garden vegetables that died back in winter, carden were perennial in many areas, coming back year after year. Without replanting, the plants grew impressively tall, creating striking silvery green towers in the garden that could withstand frost and continue producing food. Well into winter, Depression-era families would blanch the stalks by wrapping them in paper or cloth, resulting in tender artichoke-flavored stems that could be baked, braised, or added to soups. This cold, hardy nature meant fresh vegetables when most gardens were dormant under snow. Lamb's quarters. The iron-rich volunteer nature had its own way of helping during the Depression through a remarkable plant called lamb's quarters. This fast-growing green packed more iron than spinach and grew so easily that many called it nature's gift to gardeners, while some considered it a weed. Depression-era families knew its true value. It provided more nutrition than many cultivated greens while requiring absolutely no care. The plants would appear on their own in spring, growing rapidly to produce tender leaves that could be eaten raw in salads or cooked like spinach. What made lamb's quarters truly remarkable was its drought tolerance. It stayed green and productive even during the driest summers. When other greens had long since withered, the plants would self-seed, readily ensuring a continuous supply year after year. Families would let some plants go to seed while harvesting others, creating a perpetual food source that cost nothing to maintain. The young shoots could be harvested like asparagus, while the mature leaves provided iron-rich nutrition throughout the growing season. Sea kale, the coastal survivor. The final vegetable in our journey brings us to the coastlines, where Depression-era families discovered the remarkable sea kale. This perennial vegetable had mastered the art of growing in salty, sandy soils where few other food plants could survive, like a gift from the sea. It provided two distinct harvests: tender blanched shoots in early spring that tasted like asparagus, and thick blue-green leaves throughout the summer that could be cooked like cabbage. Once planted, sea kale would return year after year, growing stronger and more productive. With each passing season, the plants developed deep roots that could find moisture even in sandy soil, making them virtually drought-proof. Depression-era families living near the coast would establish patches of sea kale that would feed generations, with some plants producing food for over 20 years. Its salt tolerance meant it could grow in areas where other vegetables failed, turning otherwise useless ground into productive garden space. Brandywine tomato. The Brandywine tomato is a timeless heirloom variety that has delighted gardeners for over a century. Renowned for its generous size and unmistakably rich flavor, this tomato is a celebration of taste over perfect symmetry. Unlike the uniformly round tomatoes found in today's supermarkets, Brandywine tomatoes sport a rustic, irregular appearance with variations in color, from deep, robust reds to soft, charming pinks. In generations past, appearance was secondary. What truly mattered was flavor. And the Brandywine never disappoints. Its juicy, sweet, and well-balanced taste makes it ideal for fresh eating, sandwiches, and homemade sauces. C.R. Shaw melon. Next on our list is the C.R. Shaw melon, a lesser-known heirloom that stands out for its exceptional sweetness and striking visual appeal. This melon features a smooth, greenish-yellow rind accented by subtle netting, hinting at the care and natural artistry behind its growth. Inside, you'll find vibrant orange, juicy flesh that bursts with aromatic, honey-like sweetness, a flavor that has made it a cherished staple in home gardens. Families from generations past prize the C.R. Shaw melon for its dependable harvest and delightful taste, perfect for summer picnics and refreshing desserts. Golden Bantam Corn. Golden Bantam corn is a heartwarming reminder of summer days filled with laughter and family gatherings. This heirloom variety is celebrated for its naturally sweet, creamy kernels that offer a more nuanced flavor than today's overly engineered hybrids. In an era when fresh corn wasn't available year-round, families labored to grow and preserve Golden Bantam, cherishing its dependable taste and the memories it evoked. Whether boiled fresh on the cob or stored for winter feasts, this corn epitomized the spirit of hard work and the enduring joy of a bountiful harvest. Hubbard Squash. No heirloom garden is complete without the impressive Hubbard squash. Known for its massive size and thick, hardy skin, this winter squash was a lifeline in times before modern refrigeration. Its sweet, nutty flavor made it a versatile ingredient, perfect for hearty soups, comforting pies, or simply roasted to bring out its natural goodness. Growing Hubbard squash meant more than just cultivating a vegetable. It was about storing summer's abundance to sustain families through the long, lean winter months, evoking memories of simple, self-reliant living. Red Russian Kale. Rounding out our collection is Red Russian Kale, an extraordinary leafy green that is as nutritious as it is visually striking. Distinguished by its delicate fringed leaves and a unique blend of red and green hues, this kale variety offers a slightly sweet, peppery flavor that brightens salads, sautés, and smoothies alike. Valued by gardeners for its ease of growth and rich nutritional profile, Red Russian Kale brings a touch of old-world charm to modern cuisine, reminding us that nature's beauty and bounty go hand in hand. Rhubarb. Few plants conjure the nostalgic charm of homemade pies and jams quite like rhubarb. As a perennial vegetable that reliably returns year after year, rhubarb was the crown jewel of many a garden patch. Our grandparents eagerly awaited the spring harvest to transform its tart, tangy stalks into beloved desserts and preserves. More than just a tasty treat, rhubarb symbolized resourcefulness, a testament to families making the most of what nature provided, season after season, without fail. Fish pepper. The fish pepper is a truly one-of-a-kind heirloom pepper variety, treasured by gardeners and chefs alike for its striking beauty and bold, complex flavor. Beloved in southern gardens and historic Creole kitchens, the fish pepper stands out with its unique, variegated foliage and eye-catching fruit. Unlike uniform commercial peppers, its fruits are adorned with natural white or cream stripes over a rich, dark green base that gradually ripens to brilliant shades of yellow, orange, and eventually deep red, reminiscent of shimmering fish scales. This pepper isn't just a visual delight, it also packs a punch in the kitchen. With a flavor profile that balances tangy heat with subtle sweetness, the fish pepper is perfect for elevating traditional dishes. Its versatile taste makes it a favorite for everything from spicy sauces and zesty salsas to robust stews and fresh salads. Historically, it's said that this pepper earned its name because it was a staple in seasoning fish dishes, a testament to its culinary heritage. Cylindra beet. The cylindra beet is an extraordinary heirloom variety that has captured the hearts of gardeners and culinary enthusiasts with its striking appearance and refined flavor. Unlike the common, uniformly round beets found on supermarket shelves, the cylindra beet features an elongated, cylindrical shape that not only makes it visually unique, but also offers a more tender texture when cooked. This versatile beet is prized for its subtle, earthy sweetness and a delicate hint of spice that elevates everything from roasted vegetable medleys to vibrant salads. Its smooth, deep red exterior contrasts beautifully with the bright, crisp interior, making it an attractive addition to any plate. In traditional kitchens, cylindra beets were cherished not just for their flavor, but also for their reliable yield and storability, qualities that allowed families to enjoy their harvest well into the colder months. The legacy lives on these 25 vegetables aren't just plants. They're survival tools that helped families through America's toughest times. Each one was chosen for its ability to provide reliable food. When it mattered most today, many of these varieties still exist preserved by dedicated seed savers who understand their timeless value. If you found this journey through Depression era gardening valuable, hit that like button and subscribe for more forgotten wisdom from the past. Which of these vegetables surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, when we'll uncover more survival lessons from our ancestors.